narcissism and sociopathology, both of those have roots that are in common vernacular, where people think someone is a sociopath, or people think somebody is a psychopath, or people think somebody is a narcissist, and it's kind of widespread. When in reality, all of those fall under a personality disorder that is quite rare. So there are percentages of the population that are likely to be narcissists. 2%-ish are expected to be narcissists, and 4%-ish are suspected to be sociopaths. But the difference between somebody who is fully baked, like somebody who's dealing with an antisocial personality disorder, ATPD, ASPD, the people who actually have those disorders are quite rare compared to the average person. Instead, what we're seeing are behavior traits that people adopt that become manipulative or become abusive. And those behavior traits can actually come from a lot of different backgrounds besides just antisocial personality disorder. For example, you might be a completely healthy neurotypical person who grew up in a household where your dad systematically verbally abused your mom. So now you're just conditioned to believe that that is normal. Just like we talked about how the brain creates shortcuts and cognitive biases. So it's very difficult to be able to actually identify a true narcissist or a true sociopath just by being around them. But it's much easier to identify the behaviors that are negatively impacting your life. And that's what I try to encourage people to do is don't get tied up trying to be a psychologist who is diagnosing these people in your lives. Instead, look for the behaviors that are not giving you a positive return on the investment in the relationship that you're engaged in. If you're in a relationship that's bringing you net benefit, then you might have a higher tolerance for somebody who is short-tempered with you, or somebody who's verbally abusive, or somebody who's emotionally inconsistent. But it's not worth it to be around people if you're not getting a significant benefit from it. And when you find yourself in that position where you're trying to help others, you're constantly sacrificing, you're constantly adjusting to try to please other people, that's a great indicator that you probably grew up in a household where you were conditioned to submit, acquiesce, or bend to the will of others to try to appease them. In the face of stress, CIA teaches us that there's 4 parasympathetic responses, 4 essential reactions that the human brain has. We all know 2 of them, fight or flight. In the face of high stress levels, you will have an instinctive response to either fight or run away. But there are 2 other instinctive responses that your brain is considering. One of them is called freezing. The other one, politely, is called fawning. We call them the 4 F's of parasympathetic response. In a more vulgar world, we talk about fight, flight, freeze, and but in a more appropriate scientific world, you hear them talk about fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Fighting is obvious. It's when you fight whatever the stressor is. Flee is obvious. It's when you run away from whatever the stressor is. Freezing is relatively easy to understand. It's when you're so overwhelmed with stress, you don't take any action at all. And then fawning is the most difficult one to understand, but fawning is very common. When you're faced with stress, you submit to the dominant stress and you try to appease it in an effort to find some pathway of moving forward. It's the most easy to see in children. Some children argue back, some children run away, some children quietly find their way to a corner and sit there and play with their toys and they live in a whole different world. But then there's that 4th child who becomes very sympathetic to their parent and wants to do whatever they can to help. And they start doing the dishes, or they start mopping the floors, they clean their room, or they're afraid to upset their parent, right? That child becomes an adult, and oftentimes those adults become people who are highly susceptible to the abusive tendencies of people who model behavior off of narcissists, sociopaths, and psychopaths.
So there are behaviors that we all could be looking out for in our everyday life to avoid that person and having them as a close friend, a business partner, a lover, whatever it might be. Are there things that we should be looking out for? You know, you said stay away from the diagnosis side, but are there behaviors you want people to be aware of that could be an indication that somebody might have had so much trauma that they're going to take out their trauma on you eventually.
Yeah, without a doubt. One of the biggest telltale signs that you're looking for is the person who always claims to be the victim. If you're dealing with somebody who never gets the opportunity at work and nobody understands and they believe they're smart and they never get to show how smart they are, that person has a warped sense of reality. They essentially live in their own point of view, their own perception of the world, rather than a larger, accurate, more objective perspective of the world. And when somebody sees themselves as the victim, the person they feel the most comfortable with is the person they're explaining their victimization to, which would be you in this case, right? So if someone feels so comfortable that they're telling you that they're the victim, that's generally a red flag that when they want to vent their frustration, they will vent it at you because they do not see you as a threat. You also want to stay away from people who are constantly trying to claim that they have more capability than they really have. And we've seen this in our friends at times, right? You got the guy friend who says that he's really good with women, but then he actually chickens out whenever he walks into a bar. You got the person who says that they're really fit, but you can see that they carry a few extra pounds. Like we've all seen examples of this, but when it's carried to an extended, a more active space where they believe that they're really smart, they believe that they're really organized, they believe that they're, they can make money more than they actually can, they have higher confidence than they really do. That's an example of something we call the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is when somebody overstates their confidence. Generally, when somebody's overstating their confidence like that, again, they're showing you that they believe very highly of themselves, which is another way of them saying that they don't believe very highly of you, or else they wouldn't be telling you how great they are. If they actually thought you were a competitor, they wouldn't be giving you their qualifications. Instead, they would see you as a potential threat. Again, just like with the first example, this is the kind of person that when they turn, they are likely to turn on you. So you're looking for the signs of Dunning-Kruger in your friends, in your lovers, in your spouses, in your coworkers. You're also looking for those people who are constantly being victimized. What you're looking for to be healthy, to be safe, you're looking for somebody who's balanced. You're looking for somebody who has a wide empathetic response to the world around them. Some days they're happy, some days they're sad, some days they're confident, some days they're a little bit self-conscious. When you find that person who's constantly going back and forth through empathetic highs and lows, that is much more common of a neurotypical person than somebody who's generally very confident or someone who's consistently victimized.